Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 9. Lying back on Andy's link couch, I scuttled into Subreal in the guise of a cockroach. I deposited my information in a sleek brown egg case that immediately broke open. Thousands of millions of little cockroach bites scampered off as the mainframe sorted them out and stored them. I flipped myself over on my back and let my legs hang stiffly in the air as a couch formed beneath me. Carl appeared in the vector graphic room. He looked a little better resolved, especially in the face, and he wore a very sympathetic expression on his face.
Feeling in a Kafka mood, Rex?
Looking down at my body, I saw it go from chitin to bronze, my legs becoming gear-driven pieces of cast metal. Golden highlights flashed as I twitched. I'm feeling a little less than human. You should pay attention to the last bit of stuff first. I hid the bodies as best I could, but I couldn't pull up information on who owned the building where I killed them, so I didn't know how to order a response. Carl's face slackened for a second.
Oh yes, I can see the ownership nested loop would have caused a problem.
I clicked my mandibles at him. So who owns it?
As of a second ago, we own it. Got it for an acceptable price, as well a gunfight in the alley beside it trimmed 1,000 crowns from the price. Our agents have just taken possession.
Carl focused on me again.
I'm surprised, given the nature of the business here, you reported back so quickly.
I wish cockroaches had eyebrows so I could frown appropriately. I settled for waggling my antenna at him. I was only in the basement. When no one responded to gunshots, I assumed the place was abandoned.
Hardly. It was a bordello. One considered something of a treasure by Imperial executives slumming on level 4.
No wonder no one noticed the gunshots.
Yes, the place is well insulated for sound.
Carl nodded slowly.
We have a disposal team on site. Mr. Beach relays his compliments on your shooting skill.
Whatever I had for internal plumbing lurched with that news. Mr. Beach was a chasseur like me, but they took every bit of humanity out of him when they replaced some of his parts. He's a specialist in wet work, with nerves of steel and antifreeze running in his veins. For him to be impressed with my shooting was high praise, yet it sent a shiver through me nonetheless. Carl watched me closely.
Your use of the phone trick was quite resourceful, and the loss of your receipt is regrettable. The input you got does not indicate why they decided to kill you.
I think that decision was made by the younger Inquisitor in reaction to my use of the phone. At worst, he felt I had jeopardized some operation, though I imagine he wanted to erase the embarrassment he felt at being tricked. In all seriousness, the Brotherhood has never needed a reason to want to kill someone from Cybertronic.
Your point appears valid, within 2 standard deviations from the mean.
That's my life goal, to be statistically correct.
It is good you have a goal, Rex.
Carl's pencil and pad appeared, and he jotted down a note.
Why were they following you?
I don't know for certain. Fei Fan reported that we were not followed from the Midnight Sun, and if she said that, I buy it. Those two were not very good at tailing me, and Fei would have picked them out as easily as I had. I would guess then that they were watching the apartment house, where Yojimbo and this whiz kid live. Yojimbo indicated a Brotherhood connection or alliance in their adventure here on Luna. The Brotherhood Watchers saw me go in with Yojimbo's known associates, and then come out alone. They followed me, perhaps pursuing me while the others checked to see if I killed Yojimbo and his people. Mr. Beach gives us chasseurs a bad reputation. The rest happened because I found them out and they wanted to cover their tracks. They might have been afraid I'd beach them.
That suffices as a working hypothesis. Your conversation with your Jimbo does correlate with abnormal activities within the last 6 weeks here on Luna. Vic Bayer has apparently ceased to exist. There have been a number of gun battles that have not been matched to known corporate or gang activity. You're linking Lorraine Colvin with your Jimbo, and those odd occurrences is likely valid.
So the rest of it is true too?
Let me finish processing.
Carl's image flickered in and out between a solid and a creature described by vector graphics. The head turned toward me. Only an outline with burning red eyes in it.
Have you indulged in any psychoactive pharmacological products in the last 48 hours?
Just the beer.
Insignificant.
The image flickered more and just left the eyes in place. They grew larger, and I could see little data streams scrolling up the pupils. The irises looked like bloody suns, with fiery corneas alive and bleeding out flaming plasma tentacles.
Before we proceed, you must understand some things.
Okay.
First, we have knowledge of material for which you do not have clearance. In other words, the fact of Nephirite's existence is classified so far above your level that you could be considered a security risk. Were you not a chasseur, you would be placed in isolation for further study. It is critical you do not share knowledge of what you have seen with anyone outside Cybertronic, and only those individuals inside the corporation who I tell you are cleared for that information.
But I already spoke with your Jimbo and the others.
By luck, they possess the same level of information you do, so no harm was done. As a chasseur, you are allowed some leeway, and you have showed good judgment in the past. But you should remain extremely conservative in sharing this information.
I nodded my head and clicked my mandibles in agreement.
Second, you will instantly report any occurrence of this fugue state and relay all details about it to me. This order includes dreams about the incident and even a repeat of the incident you have already witnessed. Pay particular attention to time references, location references, and anything else you could enable us to pinpoint where and when these conversations are taking place.
I folded my legs in closer to my thorax and abdomen. What was that whole thing?
Insufficient data to draw a conclusive answer.
Have you a working hypothesis? Carl smiled briefly, then nodded.
I do, but you are not cleared to hear it.
Come on, one chasseur to another.
I'm not a chasseur, technically speaking.
This stuff is going on in my head. Don't you think I could have some valuable input on your theory?
You have a valid point.
Carl scribbled something on his pad.
Your clearance is now, code word, Ragathol. My working hypothesis is that you are involved in something of a tangle of psychic wires.
Run that by me at something less than Mach 3.
Very well. In the same way, you are able to pick up the RF mods from the kid's computer and read the data he was sending and receiving. So you picked up on a conversation between Ragathol and the party with which he was speaking. Your growing affinity for the second party to the conversation suggested the leak is coming from him. But to pick up RF mods from a computer, I have to be very close to it. Or do you have to be extremely receptive?
I gnashed my mandibles. Oh joy, I've got a mental link with something in the Dark Legion.
Likely it is one of the Dark Apostles.
That crushed me down like a giant boot. I don't even know what Dark Apostles are, but I know that's not good.
It is known that there are a number of them, Nephirites are to apostles what his marshals were to Napoleon. Apostles command them, and the Nephirites are given resources to complete their missions. In some places, Venus and Mars, you are free to infer that. In some places, the Dark Legions have created citadels and have garrisoned them with all manner of hideous troops. They lost one on Venus. There does seem to be some indication of this, yes. Carl's face sank into impassivity. We do not know much about the apostles, other than each appears to have his own area of expertise, and they do not always work well together. Even with all the corps belonging to the cartel, I don't recall seeing them work all that well together either. True, but the Dark Legion poses more of a threat to humanity than the corps do to one another. Hence the decision of the cartel to work at fighting against the Dark Legion.
My antenna whipped back and forth like wind-lashed trees. If Yojimbo's action against the Dark Legion here on Luna was a cartel operation, then you would already know about it. The fact that you don't means it was done outside the cartel, which seems to run counter to what you just said about the cartel's Dark Legion policy. Why circumvent the organization tasked with fighting the Dark Legion? Carl nodded in my direction.
Astute observation, Rex. The core reason probably stems from the fact that the cartel originally was created to be a forum for diplomatic discussions between corporations, while many saw it as a civilized step toward eliminating the lives being wasted in combat between corporations. In reality, all the corporations knew that warfare was not that cost-effective, largely because of the collateral damage to facilities, equipment, and other assets, and the time needed to train personnel to replace those who have died. Carl shrugged. Most important personnel are evacuated in the face of an attack. In any event, the diplomatic nature of the cartel means it's currently looking at the Dark Legion in two ways. First, it is to assess the true extent of the threat the Dark Legion poses to everyone. I would have thought the presence of hostile citadels on worlds in our solar system would have done that. Sarcasm aside, you are correct. A number of corps agree on the threat level, but even they are tempted to hold the Dark Legion hostage to curb the Brotherhood's actions. The Brotherhood, for example, wishes more oversight on internal corporate matters, presumably root out those who have succumbed to the Dark Legion influence. But the corporations are obviously reluctant to allow that. The corps withhold full participation in anti-Legion activities until the Brotherhood comes around. The second problem with the cartel is that there are those who wish to negotiate with the Dark Legion. They believe that no situation is so hopeless that something cannot be gained from it. The recollection of how I felt while speaking with Ragathal shook me. The Dark Legion is the ultimate evil. What can be gained from working with them? Nothing, in my assessment, but I do not always think along the lines of the other corps. For example, you know that terraforming the other planets is very costly. This is the reason we find it cheaper to fight for territory on rehabilitated worlds than to undertake the changes of others. The Dark Legion has evidenced the ability to create creatures that do not require the same life support as normal humans. A deal struck with the Dark Legion could allow some corporation to have a worker base suitable for exploiting Jovian moons or the larger asteroids. Profits would be staggering. I pressed my fingers together and realized for the first time that I had consciously transformed myself back into a human. So some corpse, unconvinced of the threat the Dark Legion poses, or convinced that they can control it, are doing nothing while the Dark Legion becomes bolder and bolder. These are the considerations, of course. Were the majority of humanity to know of the Dark Legion, they might react in unpredictable ways,
which would destroy the reliability of future product sales and development projections, cutting profits and forcing costly factory retooling to meet new demands.
Well put.
Carl tapped his pad with a pencil.
I think much of what you have supplied me here today can serve to sway some of the board members. We need to step up operations against the Dark Legion, and, if nothing else, Yojimbo and this Meat Hunter show that the Dark Legion is not invincible.
I swung my legs around and planted them firmly on the floor I could not see. I'm glad to be of service. What do you want me to do now? I can coordinate with Yojimbo and see what else I can learn.
No, for now you shall do nothing.
I frowned. Nothing. I don't like doing nothing.
There are things in your experiences this evening that disturb me. I want time to analyze them to determine a response to them.
Such as
the fact that you destroyed one Inquisitor's brain, eliminating the chance for us to make him into a chasseur. Your failure to report in promptly also made the other one useless to us.
I wasn't thinking.
On the contrary, you were thinking. This goes back to what we discussed earlier. The conflict between who you are and what you were. Your shooting shows you to be quite skilled with firearms, yet we have never trained you in their use. In fact, you chose to avoid firearms training and instead substituted some martial arts and knife training. This is the sign of a conflict that needs resolution.
Carl held up a hand to forestall my counter-argument.
That conflict is immaterial at the moment. Your experience during the first fugue state indicates a complete lack of conscious bodily control. I am working from the hypothesis that you could have had more of these states, but something prevented it. You have spent an incredible amount of time in subreal, nearly 30% of your time since you came to us. And if other messages have been passed during this time you were subreal, you might not have noticed them. I surmise this is because when you are subreal, your sensory inputs come via the computer, making it difficult for others to guess through. Your orders are to go home and refuse to go subreal. You will remain at your home until I summon you, or you have another report to make.
I might have to go out to get food. Carl shook his head.
By the time you return to your place of residence, you will have enough food for 2 weeks. If this situation persists beyond that, resupply will be affected.
A smile blossomed on his face.
And supplies did include Weitzer.
There is a God.
I prefer to think of myself in more modest terms.
I snorted a laugh. Hey, if this fugue stuff could hit me at any time, how do you know I'll get home? Perhaps you should have Dr. Carter see me home and remain to monitor my situation.
Dr. Carter is otherwise engaged.
Oh, yeah, she's working on my playmate. How about Miss Wickersham?
You would find her less than stimulating.
She is a bit stiff.
Hazards of the Mark I.
Carl smiled.
Your caution about a fugue coming on suddenly is well taken. I have just modified your navigation program so that if you do fugue, it will take you home. There, I have linked it to your evasion and counter-attack programs, so your escape will include the normal elan with which you operate.
You are too kind.
Probably I am. I probably am. But given you will endure if you fugue again, even this kindness is insufficient compensation.
Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 9. End.